That infamous year, 1984, is upon us. And today, Sunday, examines the coming year with a special edition. "1984, Orwell's Warning." I'm Eric Boardman.
And I'm Yolanda Nava, and on today's special show, we will try to determine how close we are to living in an Orwellian society. You know, there is that book, 1984, and we were reading it for the show. Very thought-provoking.
And frightening at the same time.
Yes, it is, and we're going to explore some of those issues, and I guess you have an interesting segment coming up.
My next guest is Harlan Ellison. One of the problems in dealing with Harlan is in an interview, you never know if you get any words out of him. Somebody's kind of shy and reticent. Today, we hope we'll get Harlan to talk. I say that in all jest. We all know him as a famous author.
Just a writer. Writer will do.
A writer will do.
Writer will do.
And of course, Harlan has edited a book that's now in a classic collection of science fiction short stories that is now in re-release, Dangerous Visions. We've just seen that. I bought it originally in 1961.
No, 67.
Well, I bought it in 61 in the galley stage. Let's not talk about your books. Let's talk about Orwell's book, 1984.
Right.
How far are we from the state of 1984?
How far are we from it? About 30 years behind us.
It's begun.
Oh, sure. It started in 1954, something like that. The House Un-American Activities Committee, Senator Joseph McCarthy, Tonkin Bay, Vietnam. We've been in it for at least 30 years.
And what kind of concern does this bring to you?
Well, as not just as a writer, but as a person who has to live in the world and as an observer of the human condition, I get more and more alarmed every year, and eventually begin to realize people are looking at you as if you're the specter at the banquet, because I'm forever doom crying. But
when was the last time you personally felt Big Brother?
I guess the most obvious one was when Ronald Reagan was governor of this state. He had me on his subversive list. They had my phone tapped. And, I caught him doing it. You see, that's the only thing that'll ever save us, is that most of these clowns are so incredibly inept that they would fall over their own feet.
Now, how did you catch them tapping your phone? Did you have one of those little screening devices?
No, that was late. This is really wonderful. See, when I get up in the morning, I go right to the typewriter and start working. I make my coffee and I go to the typewriter. So most of the day I spend in a bathrobe. Which is not Hugh Hefnerism, it's easier than getting dressed. So I'm sitting at the typewriter, and I had to empty my wastebasket, and I had made a phone call a minute before, and I heard all this clicking and voices on it, and I thought, oh, the phone company's mucking up again, something terrible is happening. Took the wastebasket outside to empty it into the garbage can, and I see guys in a truck in a bucket up at the telephone pole, and I look at the line they're working on, and it's going into my house. And I thought, no, surely this is paranoia. Who would mess with a little fish like me? So I go inside and I made a few phone calls, and sure enough, there was clicking, and I hear voices. And at one point, I hear a guy saying, "Oh, is that it, Bite? You got it?" You know, and I thought, no. So I went outside.
Detective work, yeah.
And and I go outside and I say, "Hi, fellas, what you doing?" And they do Porky Pig at me for a while, and finally I said, "You're tapping my line, aren't you?" And they swore nay, and so then I called in one of those sweep services, and they checked the drain on the line. And they came back and they said to me, after $400 worth of sweeping, they said, "You have enough power being drained out of you to raise the Titanic." So thereafter, knowing that the line was tapped, I did also, every time I would order, like groceries or something, I would say, "Yeah, send me up 2 pizzas and some garlic bread. And by the way, do you know that Ronald Reagan is a terrible human being who beats his mother and, makes it with dogs and things like that?" I would just do that. And this went on for months and months and months, and I knew all this stuff was going into the files. So somewhere there's a file, underneath the Colorado mountains in that CID thing, there's all these rotten remarks about Ron.
How did you get the phone tap taken off?
Eventually it just went away.
They got bored?
Yeah. I mean, they finally figured out that I was not plotting the violent overthrow of McDonald's or something like that, and they just...
Well, as we lose this right of privacy, how do we fight against it?
Well, it gets more and more... I've just lost a word. A word just fell out of my head. Systematized. Now they want you to do all your banking through the computer by mail so they can find you everywhere. I think that everybody should be a little bit of a desperado. For instance, I used to overpay my telephone bill by 30 cents each month. It cost them something like $50 or $100 to find that 30 cents in the computer and get it, they'd have to put it on the credit for me until finally you get about $10, and they have to try and return it to you, and they don't know whether to send you cash or credits or green stamps or something. And that was my way of getting even with them.
That's one individual. As a group, what can we do?
Well, first of all, we have to be as smart as we can be. We tend to be a very lazy and slovenly species.
Why? What causes that in our society?
You really want me to tell you?
Oh, yeah.
Television.
Wait a minute, this medium we're on right now?
That one there, yeah. That's it.
What does television do to us?
Well, television permits us not to have to think. It gives us all kinds of answers and has for the last 40 years. For instance, we talk about violence on television, and yet there are entire generations of kids who have grown up believing that the basic solution to any problem is a punch in the mouth.
Or a pistol.
A pistol. And then we wonder why everybody's violent. You go to the movies and you see a film in which somebody has been, like Death Wish, somebody has been brutalized for 3/4 of the movie, and finally he picks up a machine gun and wipes out everybody in sight, and the audience applauds madly. This is a playing to the beast in us and to an inarticulate vocabulary that is best punctuated by a punch in the mouth. Also, for the first time in the history of the world, television has provided us with what could be called a universal curriculum, meaning that a child in Botswana land and a child in Bayonne, New Jersey, both get the same impression of male, female, rich, poor, old, young, labor, capital. They get these stereotypes, which have to be squeezed down into about 13 seconds of TV time.
Okay, you're a writer. How can we change this? When you're writing a script, you've just written a film, you've written television shows, do you inject that humanity in the script?
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons I stopped writing TV. See, I decided to go into honest occupations like pimping and horse doping. I wrote TV